that if you ever miss class and go onto my blog to see what we covered and there's no video, it's because I did just a dumb thing just like that. I forgot to put it on. And I'm not very professional at this. Mostly we'll just film my stomach, which is like, that's really terrible too. I don't mean to be weird. Okay, so music ties in to the first portion of this. Language will also tie in, but we'll also be looking at things like arguing over the topic of abortion. If you have two friends arguing over abortion, by the way, everyone's familiar with abortion, I'm sure. It's a pretty hot topic today. You might have a point of view whether abortion should be allowed or not, or you could care less. All sorts of opinions on it. The question I have for you, though, is what if you have, imagine you're the supervisor at a workplace where you have employees that are engaged in an argument over this kind of thing, and they're furious with one another because they're in disagreement, and it's a serious issue for people, right? How do you handle it as a supervisor? How do you reconcile it? Because you need both of these employees. You need them to work with one another. You need them to get over it. You, of course, might have your own opinion. I can't imagine you not, right? But your job is to get them to work together. So how do you view that? That might work. That might work.
I asked him a question first. I would always ask first, if you can tell me what this has to do with our day-to-day work, we'll continue this. If you can't explain to me what this has to do with our everyday work, then we have to stop it because it's counterproductive. It's as simple as that. If it has nothing to do with what we do here at wherever we are, then we have to stop it.
Excellent.
It would definitely
That's
work
great.
depending on where you're working at.
Yeah, heavily depending on where you are.
If we're working at a medical facility, that may not.
Acknowledge that everybody has the right to do whatever they want, but you don't need to tear people down about it, and it's better to just come to I agree to disagree. You can have your opinion, I'm my opinion.
Of course, if you believe it's murder,
Move on.
you might not agree that it's up to everyone to
That's
have.
business. You can argue.
Yeah, I mean that's why I picked the topic of abortion as an issue, because and this is interesting too, because if you get into our debate team, I don't know if you're familiar with it, but UAA has a first world-class winning debate team. They compete with people like Princeton, Harvard, Yale, Oxford, Cambridge, you name it. They're in the major competitions, and if you ever stop by the philosophy department and the admin and humanities building, they have more trophies than fit in the case. It's just they've won tons of stuff. And Professor Johnson, Stephen Johnson, is a coach, and he's got a book out on teaching debate. And they've had lots of competitions, even that you've probably seen advertised, where other schools are here. They're debating a particular topic of interest to people in Anchorage. In order to get funding, of course, for their travel, because the team has to actually pay their way to travel to all these different countries to have these debates and so on. And so we have an absolutely fantastic debate team, and the debates that they do, the competitions that they participate in, each debate team going up to the others, competing with sometimes multiple other schools, all have the topics that will be debated, but they don't get to pick their side until the moment when they're going to debate the other team. So they come up and they find out which topic they're debating and which team gets which topic. Absolutely fantastic. So they have to be prepared to defend either side. Right? And by the way, there's a hidden agenda of why this is done. That's because the students are being taught to view things from multiple sides on purpose. And this question does the same thing. So what I'm asking you to do is to pause to look at both sides of this issue and then be aware of both sides of it so that you can then deal with this. So I'm trying to do the same thing that Professor Johnson and the world of that debate system is doing, and that is trying to prepare people to think about both sides of issues, multiple sides of issues. Why? Why so? If we think of our cognitive ability, our conceptual schemas as languages, they seem to have an algorithm, the same as music, that enables us to play a good melody. Some melodies are better than others. Some are going to be more successful, depending on what you're actually trying to accomplish. If you use the evolution narrative to argue how all of these different cultural, ethnic worldviews have grown up, all these different ways of living, forms of life, whatever you want to call them, right? They've been competing with one another. And they're competing in different environments. So there's lots of different environments that are going to have an impact on the way the human culture can survive in that particular environment, right? As they compete with one another, we develop the language, the tool that you use in order to survive in that particular cultural climate, that particular situation. By the way, that's also why they argue that when we lose a language, so we lose different like native languages, however many languages we apparently are losing per year, that we're losing something valuable to the human culture as a whole, because we're losing a tool that enables people to survive in whatever environment that was that they created that language, right? Well, so what we have are worldviews that have different ideas about whether a fetus is a person or not, right? And those compete with one another for good reasons. And we have those competitions continuing in our much more complex culture. How do we survive this competition in our society? The way that we seem to have done this, and the United States is like the leader in doing this, has been since the revolution, right? That is, we agree to disagree. Right. Go to the imam in Iran and tell him what you guys should all do is agree to disagree. They will imprison you for that idea. That's not the way they do it, as far as I understand. Anybody know anything different? Within limits. There are differences of opinion within their particular interpretations, maybe, of their scripture. Right? They're allowed to argue over that, but for example, if you're a woman, you're not allowed to be in the debate. Sorry. And by the way, you should be wearing a lot more clothing, because I can see your face. And how did you get here? Where's your husband? You get the idea, right? There's all kinds of rules. So notice, we're really unique in how open and liberal we are. I'm not meaning Bernie Sanders liberal. Sorry about that. That was irritating you. Use the word liberal in multiple ways, right? But if you think of it, we're a liberal democracy. We agree to disagree. Wow, that's the rule, in fact. So, we're trying to encourage people to learn as many different interpretations of things as possible. Because those are more tools. The more tools they have, the more likely they're going to be able to succeed in a particular environment with a particular problem. Because they're going to have the right tool for the job, right? So we're talking about the nature of language, and that's something I'm going to try to explain. If you don't already believe it, you might already believe it. Most people react very strangely when I start pointing out that you believe that the world works a certain way because of the language you speak. But the language you speak creates a particular filtering system or bias. There's lots of different languages out there. According to the French, tables and chairs have sex. Not exactly, but they're masculine and feminine, right? And that just seems really weird to us because in English, all of the tables and chairs are neuter, right? In fact, things are, in English, neuter, whereas in French, there is no neuter. Isn't that weird? How do you get along thinking everything in the world is masculine or feminine? Isn't that weird? Cats and dogs. Right? Le chien, le chat, right? When I was a kid growing up, I thought the males were dogs and the females were cats. Took me a while to find out that there were actually males and female dogs. In fact, that's where the word bit, well, we have an English word for female dog, which isn't polite. Although, I'll never forget taking my sick pup to the German vet in Berlin once, and I put her up on the table. He had two tall guys standing next to him in their white coats. Absolutely not Nazis. Sorry, I was just kidding. He was sitting there at the table, and I put my female dog on the table. Said she's really sore around the middle. He looked at her, and he looked up at me, and in his best English, he said, "She's just an old fat bitch." It's a scientific description of what was wrong with her, and I, of course, did not laugh. That was hilarious. In the Army, you learn not to laugh, especially at the drill sergeant who's staring you right in the face and saying, "You're lower than whale shit at the bottom of the ocean, recruit."
They can't do that anymore, unfortunately.
Well, they did while I was there. But that was fun, actually. I enjoyed that. Okay. Am I driving you crazy already? We're still just talking about how to get an A, right? You go back. You're already crazy?
Yeah.
That really helps. Thanks for that. That's very reassuring. So analyze a couple of jokes. Ha! Why do we use jokes?
Coping mechanism.
Everybody likes a surprise. The whole point of a joke is that there's a surprise near the end, and it's fun.
To elicit joy.
I'm trying to do that for like the last hour.
I was just typing.
Yeah.
I was so worried. I was like, oh my god.
I thought it was someone else's first.
So this, I think, is funny.
Good afternoon and welcome to a packed Olympic Stadium luncheon for the second leg of this exciting fight.
How many of you have already seen this?
And here come the Germans now, led by their skipper, Nobby Hagel. They must surely start favourites this afternoon. They've certainly attracted the most attention from the press with that team problem. And let's now see their lineup. The Germans playing 4-2-4, Leibniz in goal, back four, Kant, Hegel, Schopenhauer and Schelling, front runners Schlegel, Wittgenstein, Nietzsche and Heidegger, and the midfield duo of Beckenbauer and Jaspers. Beckenbauer obviously a bit of a surprise there. And here come the Greeks, led off by their veteran centre-half, Heraclitus. Let's look at their team, as you'd expect, it's a much more defensive lineup. Plato's in goal, Socrates in front runner there, and Aristotle as sweeper. Aristotle very much the man in form. One surprise is the inclusion of Archimedes. Well, here comes the referee, Kung Fu Tzu Confucius and his two linesmen, St. Augustine and St. Thomas Aquinas. And as the two skippers come together to shake hands, we're ready for the start of this very exciting final. The referee, Mr. Confucius, checks his son, and they're off. Nietzsche and Hegel there. Carl Jasper Somerset on the
Nietzsche.
outside. Wittgenstein there with him.
Nietzsche.
That's Beckenbauer. Kennington there, hiding and covering. Schopenhauer.
I think Beckenbauer is a
And now it's the Greeks,
mathematician.
Epicurus, the finest number 6. Aristotle. Empedocles of Archagos and Democritus with him. There's Archimedes. Socrates, there he is, Socrates. Socrates there, going through. There's the ball, there's the ball.
We'll be bringing you back to this exciting contest the moment anything interesting happens.
Your face is that's the correct face for watching this. Puzzlement. Exactly.
As you can see, Nietzsche has just been booked for arguing with the referee. He accused Confucius of having no free will, and Confucius, he say, name go in book. And this is Nietzsche's third booking in 4 games. And that is Karl Marx. Karl Marx is warming up. It looks as though there's going to be a substitution on the German side. Obviously, manager Martin Luther has decided on all-out attack, and indeed he must, with only 2 minutes of the match to go.
Martin Luther's the
Who's
coach.
going to be played? Who's going to come off? It could be Jaspers, Hegel, or Schopenhauer. But it's Wittgenstein. Wittgenstein was one army only last week. And here's Marx. Let's see if he can put some life into this German attack. Evidently not. Honestly. Well now, with just over a minute left, the replay on Tuesday looks absolutely vital. There's Archimedes. And I think he's had an idea. Archimedes out to Socrates. Socrates back to Archimedes. Archimedes out to Heraclitus. He beat Hegel. Heraclitus has on flick. Here he comes on the far post. Socrates is there. Socrates, there he is. Socrates has scored. The Greeks are going mad. The Greeks are going mad. Socrates scores. The beautiful cross from Archimedes. The Germans are disputing it. Hegel is arguing that the reality is merely an a priori adjunct of non-naturalistic ethics. Kant, by the categorical imperative, is holding that ontologic exists only in the imagination, and Marx is claiming was offside. But Confucius
Was offside.
whistle. It's all over. Germany, having Charles Dingle's famous midfield trio, Bent and Loganov in the semi-final, have been beaten by the odd goal. And let's see it again. There it is. Socrates. Socrates heads in and Leibniz doesn't have a chance. And just look at those delighted Greeks. There they are, Sophocles, Empedocles and Archagos. What a game he had. And Epicurus is there. And Socrates, the captain, who scored what was probably the most important goal of his career.
So that was a joke.
Just be glad they didn't go to extra time.
They could easily have done that, yes. Actually, I think Marx was correct. It was offside. Right? Don't you have to take it into the other side first before you can bring it back to the score?
Well, they had way too many attackers, like too many forward people as well. So I mean,
But-
because you're only supposed to have like what 3 or so. I can't remember.
But it is funny. But why are jokes funny? That's our first question, I guess. I noticed while you were watching it, you were wiping away tears. I hope, were they tears of merriment or?
No, my eyelashes.
Oh, sorry. But we laugh. We have a good time when we. My favorite joke, by the way, is why do little baby ducks walk softly?
Because they're white.
Because little baby ducks can't walk hardly. What kind of joke is it? Fun. Which is using hard and soft inappropriately. So I'm breaking a argument rule by switching the meaning of the word. So I don't really have a valid argument, and you know it. So you laugh. So in other words, jokes, maybe not all of them, I'm not sure about slipping on a banana peel. I'm not sure that's a joke. Right? But jokes, it seems, are arguments that are invalid. So the same way that we tell that an argument is invalid, we also apply to jokes. And it's kind of fun to follow a particular comedian and see what kind of pattern. They almost always use the same pattern over and over again to tell their kind of joke. So that's kind of interesting. There's a book by Daniel Dennett called Inside Jokes, which uses the theory of evolution to try to figure out why we use humor. Can you see that? Is that too small?
So the title itself is kind of a lot.
It is. It is.
Inside jokes are jokes only a few people are supposed to be able to get. Inside jokes means you're trying to get inside the topic. I like that.
And there are jokes inside.
Exactly.
Some of them are funny. For example, Ellen DeGeneres has one that he quotes where she says she went to the zoo and she visited, they have a petting zoo, and they also have a heavy petting zoo, which is there for people who really love animals. So there's a variety of jokes, but what he's mostly trying to do is analyze why we tell humor, including using neuroscience in order to see what it does to the brain, etc. And he comes to some pretty odd conclusions. His main conclusion overall is that we use humor as a reward for debugging. Debugging in the sense of solving a problem. So arguments, for example, are meant to be valid. If it turns out that the argument that someone gives you is invalid, you try to solve what's wrong with that argument. Well, jokes turn out to be very similar to that. So when we go over fallacies, I'll focus on humor as part of the way I'll try to entertain you while we're doing that. As I realize, of course, that roughly 5 hours, 9 times, is not going to keep you happy all the time, especially when you're tired already when you get here. So we'll talk about jokes and compare them to fallacies, and talk about different styles of jokes. Hopefully this won't ruin your appreciation of humor, although I think I've had some people complain. If you start analyzing your favorite comedians and you see the pattern that they use, then you become kind of disillusioned with what was attractive while you weren't aware of how it was working, and it gets ruined when the illusion is gone. Anybody read the newspaper? You ever heard of it? We have some. Anchorage Daily News, again, was Dispatch News for a while. There are different sections in the paper. Some of the sections are news, and that's where a reporter goes out and tells you what happened. So, for example, a bicyclist in the race are riding by, and there's a moose with 2 calves by the fence. Here's a picture. You can see that that's actually happening. 3 police cars were there to block the moose from attacking the bicyclist. So they kept the race going, etc. So that's news, right? On the other hand, and so would be an objective news item, right? And hopefully the newspaper article doesn't contain things like, they should not have done that because the moose has a right to have her calves in peace, etc. Or none of that shows up. That would be opinion, right? So that's a main way of looking at the difference between the opinion pieces. How can you pick those out? Right? That's important, I think, especially with, how many of you are familiar with the arguments over fake news?
I know enough to know what they are. That's it.
Yeah, how do you trust stuff? I mean, I remember reading a quote from Abraham Lincoln that said, "You can't trust everything you read on the internet." I was embarrassed once. I read an article that said that Sarah Palin, Governor Sarah Palin, had been selected by Harvard to teach a political science course as an adjunct. I was like, ha! Couldn't wait to go and talk to my friends from Harvard, point out that their alma mater had hired Sarah Palin to teach as an adjunct in the political science department. Steve Haycox looked at me and said, "Bill, are you familiar with something called The Onion?"
Truly wonderful.
Oh, no. Yes, I had not. Since it was posted on my Facebook page, I had just read that and I swallowed it hook, line, and sinker. So it's sometimes hard to tell fake news from, there's no opinion in that. It didn't say anything about, we can't believe they've, no, it just said she has been selected. How about a lie? What is a lie?
I think a lie would be whoever is making the statement if they believe it to be wrong, if they know it to be wrong. like sometimes certain people can convince themselves that something they know is not true. They can convince themselves that it's true.
So they really believe it.
Sometimes, yeah.
Lawyers tell me
I would think that's
that it's a lie if they know something to be true or false and intentionally mislead others by telling them that it's true when they know it's false, false when they know it's true. Yes.
I think that word intentionally is really important when you're talking about lying. There is motive behind it. Because I know that this thing happened, but I'm going to intentionally pretend like it didn't or the opposite against someone else.
A lie does come with intent, and otherwise it's just a false statement. Or
So now we have the question about what is a false statement? What is a true statement? Is this difficult?
it would be
in this context, yes.
a preconceived notion.
So the same thing with like the intent. So you can, say something that you're not entirely sure is true or false and have it be false, but you're not lying because you intend to misread information. If that makes sense.
Well, I'm looking for the absolute basic true statement. What makes a true statement?
A true or a factual statement. So true would be just,
But what examples have, so this is a cup. Everyone agrees that's a true statement. It's also called an observation sentence because you can see it. It's in English though, so that wouldn't make sense if I were in a Chinese neighborhood, right? Unless they spoke English. So this is a cup. This is a good cup.
It's holding the liquid inside, so yes.
That depends on what you define as good. If if you want a good cup to be something that keeps something at a certain temperature, like say if you
Terrible
want.
cup. I lied. No, I didn't. Because it's not a true statement. Or false. It's neither true nor false. This is a cup. That's a true statement. This is a good cup.
That would become an opinion though.
That becomes an opinion, which is neither true nor false. Because you could disagree with me, and I hope I didn't stain the rug.
I think they have shit for water.
There's tea.
Tea. Flavored water.
I'm concerned. 5 hours, on a stretch. Without caffeine, I'm not sure how that would work. Wow, this is fun, actually, if you think about it. It's, wow, it doesn't take much. I just added one other word. Good. And all of a sudden, no longer a true statement, an opinion, which is neither true nor false. Mozart is good music. Salieri is okay music, but not as good as good. Although, at one time, Salieri was more popular than Mozart. That's a true statement, as far as I know, historically correct. But for me to say that Mozart's music is better than Salieri's music is an opinion, a thesis, a hypothesis, a theory, a story, neither true nor false. And so if you say the opposite, you're not lying. So here's a pertinent example. Just the other day, President Trump, Donald Trump, yes, heard of him? Yes?
A couple times.
Okay, so apparently he said that there's no danger to the something of this sort. There's no danger to the United States from anything going on in the Middle East. Never was. So we should have never attacked there. We should never have gotten involved, etc. None of that has been in order to protect the interests of the United States. And then Ann Coulter, who's a columnist, came out and said, that is a big fat lie. Which you might agree with, or not. But the thing is, he was voicing an opinion. And opinions can be neither true nor false, so therefore, based on our definition of what a lie is, you can't call what he said a lie. Does that make sense? Is this interesting? In fact, most of the things that President Trump says that irritates most of the people that are irritated by what he says, and they claim that he's lying about all of it, are wrong because he's not lying. He can't. He's voicing an opinion that's totally different than what they believe. So what we have is a difference of opinion. So it's important to be able to discriminate between opinions in the paper, opinion pages, and objective news articles. Shouldn't really have a problem with fake news. You should be able to check and see if that news item is true or false.
How do you do that?
That's a good question. Is what source do you go to? Because most of the things that, of course, we read in the newspaper or see on the internet are not things that are observation statements. Like I saw the moose along the fence with her 2 calves on Sunday. And you rode by it, I suppose?
I saw the moose.
You saw the moose? So that's objective fact. But an awful lot of the stuff, like what was going on in Gaza, is there a correct pronunciation of Gaza? I don't think so. I got to ask the ambassador to East Germany, so this was back in the communist days, from Finland, what the name of Finland was in Finnish. Suomi. I never guessed. Interesting. So most of the information we get over the internet and the newspaper, radio, TV, wherever you get your news, how can you verify it? Not sure. But you can develop favorites, although, do you think biases, worldviews, opinions, etc., are going to be part of that? Absolutely. Does it help if you listen to other news from other places?
Make a bigger
Perhaps.
picture.
Then, of course, you're getting two biased opinions. How does that help you actually find out what's true? So here's a quiz question. I will ask quiz questions. I haven't explained what those are yet, but when I ask you a quiz question, just email me your response to it, but you can also discuss it in class. Does the Earth go around the sun, or does the sun go around the Earth?
They revolve around each other.
Or do they revolve around each other? I have three opinions.
I guess it depends. I mean, if it's possible you can stand in the sun, then the Earth's revolving around the sun. If
You could stand on the sun?
If it's possible. I'm just thinking like, trying to think critically. So if you're standing on the sun and the Earth's revolving around you, and then if you're standing on Earth, the sun's revolving around you. So this is truth, not fact.
Oh, I thought, I wasn't sure at what point it becomes. There's other points of view too, right? There's, always have fun looking for this one. Sorry about the music. And this is kind of crazy too, but the basic model is correct, I think. So you know the sun is moving as well, right? It's moving around the center of the galaxy.
That's a crazy visual.
That's way too fast, but you get the idea. The planets can't be just orbiting around a sun, staying in one place in space. That doesn't happen. We move. Compared to, say, like Orion and other places, right? We're going around the galaxy about every 250 million years, is that right? Something like that? So if this is your model, then both of the models, the heliocentric and the geocentric, are false. Does that make sense?
Well, but still with this model, you would still believe that the Earth would be rotating around the sun.
Or that the sun's rotating around the Earth.
The sun's in the very
And I think if you looked at how
In
this
this
would,
sense, the planets are following the sun across another rotational field.
so I think if you plotted them for a long period of time, you would see that they look kind of like frequency waves, with neither going around the other. But I'm not an astronomer. You can check with Travis Rector and see how this works. Einstein tells us that neither are going around any of the others. Everything is moving in a straight line. But space is curved, so it also explains why there isn't gravity. The reason that we're staying, this makes it really difficult, especially while I'm driving down the Glen Highway, because I'm trying to imagine, okay, so which way is the Earth spinning? How should I try to drive in order to make sure I hold my place on the road? It was way more complex than you would, if you just assume the Earth is still, and I'm just driving on it 65 miles an hour, because that's the speed limit. Though I believe the average speed that people drive on it is 75, according to the police. But but if you think that the reason that I'm staying on the Earth is because I'm flying on an arc through space, and so is the Earth, and it just so happens that my movement is just lined up with the Earth so that I'm staying where I am. Does that make sense? No. But I keep trying to read how this is explained, but basically we're not kind of magnetically drawn to one another. Notice, even though you're gorgeous, but wait a minute, take that back. I'm not allowed to say that. But that's a different kind of magnetism, right? Yes. You're gorgeous too, Ben. I wouldn't get in trouble for saying that. I could get in trouble for saying that. Crazy college. You're gorgeous too. Everybody in the room is gorgeous, except those who are not. And you know who you are. So that's another model. How many models are there? So this is called model-dependent realism. So we create cognitive models, which, by the way, didn't exist until we had a language, and then these competitive human developments create these conceptual models. So if you get a chance, read Galileo by Heilbronn. Absolutely amazing how they and Copernicus and Kepler and Tycho Brahe and Pope Urban VIII. Pope Urban VIII was the one that was right, actually. If you read the book, it is amazing. Amazing. Absolutely amazing. Aristotle, they're all involved in creating these models, competing over specific issues. It's a tool. What are you trying to accomplish with this tool? Shoot these cannonballs so that they hit here. By the way, if the Earth is like the cannonball, etc., right? So if you think about it, they're all trying to figure out these conceptual models. And the models that are successful win temporarily. So Sir Isaac Newton wins. But then Einstein beats the crap out of Sir Isaac Newton, right? So basically, Sir Isaac Newton was wrong, even though it still works. Whoa, how does that work? If Sir Isaac Newton's theory works, and it's much easier in practice, we still use it when we build buildings. If you use geometry of curved spaces to try to build a building, it will take you forever. You'll still be trying to plan the building. Totally not a useful way of designing architecture. But on the other hand, if you're trying to land something on Mars, you better go with Einstein, right? That's amazing. Right? So we have these conceptual models that are tools for us to accomplish certain things. They're based on our language, and they work, and so we say that they're true. But is the universe actually structured this way? There's that question we had right from the beginning. It seems like logic is coincidental with the way the universe works. Why? Because we're successful, so we think this model works better than that model, so we think, aha, this is true, but actually this one is still useful. The other one is still useful. It's still useful to think of the Earth as the center of the universe. There are reasons for thinking that that's a very useful model, right? So we have all these different models that we use for different things. Just like we have French. If you go to France, you should speak French. If you go to Germany, you should speak German or Turkish. Sorry. My first day in Berlin, I went to breakfast. Well, it was a late breakfast. I went in and I saw the chefs working there at the mess hall, and I started saying hello to them in German to try out my German, and they all looked at me confused. Wow, my German is sehr schlecht. Terrible, right? Turned out the reason they didn't understand my German is because they weren't Germans, they were Turks. Not that there's anything wrong with being Turkish. It's just, it surprised me because I thought, I'm in Germany, the people in Germany should be German, Turks. How many of you have been to Germany? Did you meet Turkish people there?
I met Turkish people in Turkey. I never met a German in Turkey.
I've met Turkish people here. Natasha is a fantastic person. Teaches German.
I got into an altercation with a group of Turkish guys in Germany.
I'd like to hear about that.
They just, we were stationed over there, they like to try and fight you guys before. And then you go outside, they try and rob you. That was like their MO. So then you got blacklisted from going back to certain bars, hang out in certain parts of town and stuff like that.
I never went to a bar the whole time I was in Germany.
Those are fun places to be.
I saw Lohengrin, the opera though. I saw West Side Story auf Deutsch, which was fantastic. So I saw operas over. I'm into music, real music. I mean, ooh, that's prejudice. Opinion. And a joke. You can laugh at that. That's really funny. Okay, so what I'm trying to say though is that when we've got these models that we create, we can't step outside of our models. We can't step outside of the languages we speak to see how the world really is in a non-linguistic way. And we don't absolutely know for sure that our language maps the way the universe really is. In fact, the whole concept of the universe being a real way is actually just a linguistic concept. See how that works? There might not be such a thing as a real universe, apart from a linguistic conceptual schema that enables us to think, aha, we're talking in a language, but what way is the world outside of the language? Whoa. We invented that. Right? Partially because we've got all these competing models and we think, which one is true? Whoa. How does God really want us to treat the fetus?
Which God?
Which model are we using? Yeah. Which conceptual schema are we using there? What's the tool used for? Is this fun?
I just kind of feel like the theme is like human conception, like what we conceive, just kind of predicts or, produce the risk of chaos and stuff like that. Like time, social structures, financial structures. It's not very tangible language, but it all helps.
Well, it is tangible, though. This is socially constructed, but I can't will it away.
Like there's no value to it unless we say it has value.
That's probably true. But say money, my credit card, if we didn't agree that it has value, it doesn't.
Right.
But it does.
Because we agree upon it.
Because we do. And in fact, if I get one person that disagrees and says, I don't believe your credit, I'll go to someone else. That's all right. That guy doesn't get my business.
It's the same with like time, like in language. It's all
Absolutely. Absolutely fascinating. We don't know what time is.
just something we agree upon, essentially.
And some argue that the faster you go, the slower time goes. And I disagree. It seems to me that the faster you go, time stays the same. But Einstein says no. So that's interesting. And they've actually tested this. They've got a clock flying on a plane, another incredibly matched clock on the Earth. Guy goes flying, comes back, and there's nanoseconds worth of difference. It seemed to indicate that, yes, the plane's clock went slower than the one on the Earth.
Twins paradox.
So, but that doesn't mean we'll never be able to figure it out. It's kind of, the infinity problem. We'll never actually get all the way to the end. We can keep getting closer and closer and closer. What's the proof of this progress? People live longer. Microwaves. When I was a kid, we didn't have microwaves. If I want to make a cup of hot tea, I put my cup of water in the microwave, push beverage, bing, instant hot tea. Microwaves. That's a human invention based on a theory of how the universe works. And it works. How many of you saw Elon Musk put his sports car out in space?
Professor Rector made us watch out this class. Or didn't make us, we had it on in class.
That's cool. Was Travis jealous though? Because I would have argued he should have just given me the car.
Yeah.
You know,
He was pretty excited.
especially when those two booster rockets came down and landed simultaneously. That was unbelievable. Unbelievable. However, that certainly seems like progress to me. But how many of you also get into the issue of if we believe in progress, that seems to be prejudice? So, I'm trained to respect the learning processes of different types of individuals. Right? We have people that learn different ways. Some folks don't learn as fast as others in particular types of class experiences. They're still learning, but they're learning in a different way. When we sit and we argue, and people tell us something and lecture something, the whole time they're lecturing to me, I'm analyzing what they're saying. It's trained, habit, right? So I think, what's the main conclusion that they're trying to give me? What are the premises that they're using to support that conclusion? What is the data that they're using to support those premises, etc. So if I find a weakness in what they're arguing, as soon as they stop talking, I ask them about that weakness. That's what I do, right? I've had friends, colleagues tell me that I'm not listening to them. I shouldn't be thinking about what I'm going to say when they stop talking. I should be just listening to them, absorbing their thoughts. That doesn't seem like learning to me. That seems like not learning. How many folks notice that that's a terrible thing to say? I'm prejudiced in favor of a particular Western bias. By the way, this is kind of interesting. Chinese, as far as I understand it, and I've had a Chinese philosophy professor from Beijing agree and teach this here on campus. Says that the Chinese can't do Western metaphysics. They can't do Aristotelian logic, which we're going to do in this class. Aristotelian logic argues, first off, the three laws of thought, which I gave you earlier, and argue that there are four types of statements, four categories of statements that can be true or false. So when we were trying to find a statement that could be a lie or a true statement, what I'm thinking in my mind is they have to fit a particular grammatical pattern, right? And there's only four of these patterns. You can say, all of the subject is predicate, which we call an A statement. You could say none of the subject is predicate, which we call an E statement. You can say that some of the subject are predicate, an I statement. We'll go over this in more detail as we get to chapter 5. And some of the subject are not the predicate, the O statement, right? So Aristotle describes this. Did he invent it, or did he just accumulate the wisdom from his time period and give us this? This is the invention of logic, right? So we have these four types of statements. So give me a statement that's true or false.
I'm tired.
So you are?
Stephanie.
Stephanie. Did you tell me that?
Mm-mm.
You are Stephanie.
I know.
She is Stephanie, and not another person. So Stephanie is in the set of things that are tired, right? So that's an A statement. And I presume that you're not lying to me, that it's true.
Correct.
It's not just your opinion, it's really true, because we know whether we're tired or not. And you can lie, actually, but usually we don't. In order for these types of statements to exist in your language, you have to have a copula, a logical copula, the verb to be, so that I can say, this is that. So I'm saying, everything in the one set is in this set also. These two sets are mutually exclusive. Some members of this set are in this set. Some members of this set are not in this set. Those are the four logical possibilities that we can make that end up being a true or false statement. By the way, we can have more complex statements. If I'm using the law of excluded middle, where I'm saying you're either John or you're not John, right? Those are actually two statements, which would be one of these four types of statements, combined with a disjunct, which enables me to give you a true statement and its contradiction with an or in between, so that either the contrary, or the contradiction rather, or the contradiction is true, and that has to be the case. Always, right? But for the most part, if what we're looking for is the true statement, the observation statement, the moose was there with her calves by the fence, then it has to be one of these four types of statements. Right? Chinese does not have the verb to be. So Chinese cannot make these four kinds of statements. Therefore, Chinese cannot make true or false statements. How can they form a contract with us? How can they do it? How can we communicate with them? How can that be true? I had an individual who was Samoan in a logic class. Samoan is a language that's Asian in origin. If I say all horses are animals, is that true or false?
True.
True. If I say all animals are horses, is that true or false?
False.
A particular individual who was from Samoa could not see the difference, he said, between those two statements. By the way, if you have children who don't speak English, are they going to have trouble in class when they are taking tests that are in English? That's kind of interesting, don't you think, that our school district has the greatest diversity of any school district in the United States? And by the way, our students in this school district are doing among the worst of any students in the United States. Is there a relationship, maybe? Is that politically correct to point out? Well, it might be necessary to point out. First learn English before you take tests in English. But that person had been in the United States for 8 years learning English, and yet was still thinking first, I think, in Samoan, and then translating into English. And so he wasn't catching the logic of English. Does that make sense?
Stuck in this traditional logic versus being in more of a modern logic.
Well, I mean, this is one of the issues associated with the concept of progress, right? And just think of all the political baggage, the moral baggage that carries, because you think of manifest destiny. Whoa, what's that bring up, right? And the future, of course. Because Chinese people are learning mathematics. Mathematics has the equal sign, which is the copula. So, that's pretty interesting. You see why I'm excited about all of this stuff? I'm addicted, but that's me. Okay, so, why are scientific articles and moral arguments incompatible can you be a good scientist if you're a moral person?
You can be, you just separate the two trains of thought, because morals are based on feelings and ethics, and science is just based on facts, what's right in
So
front of
you can't be a good scientist unless you're moral.
You have to be objective as well as,
So if you're not being objective, you're an immoral scientist.
if you're not being objective, then you're not being a good scientist, but that doesn't mean you're not a good person.
A good scientist. Is that objective?
That's a matter of subjective.
This is a cup. Actually, it's not. Remember, this is a cup. This is a good cup. This is a scientist. Oh, Paul's a scientist.
Both can hold tea?
And he wouldn't leave. Well,
After a
well,
while, maybe.
after a while. See the problem? You can't be a good scientist unless you have morals. They're not incompatible. You can't be a scientist without having a moral point of view. I'm not saying that scientists are screwed up for thinking that there's a difference, because they're not. Most scientists I know are actually very clear on this. There are some people who think that there's a moral point of view and a scientific point of view. Guess what? You can't possibly separate them. Does that make sense?
So it's both.
Yeah, there
So
has
first
to
can be
be, has to
both.
be a moral perspective. In fact, we can do a scientific analysis of the belief system of the particular individual involved. In fact, my definition of religion is belief in a meta-narrative. Sorry, this page is too big. So we could talk about this too. So this is kind of a sociological point of view. That for someone to be thought of as religious, they're religiously believing a particular set of fundamentals. We all have them. For example, the law of identity, the law of non-contradiction, the law of excluded middle. I'm not sure I believe up is always that way.
Well, up is just a term of perspective from your context.
But there are other things I absolutely believe. This is my left foot. This is my right foot. This is my left foot. This is my right foot. That kind of stuff. See where this is going? We're all religious. Unless you're really depressed because you don't know what to believe. Whoa. There are those. And by the way, philosophy can do that to you, and that's scary. So teaching philosophy comes with a real responsibility to people that if they've never talked about the way language works, talked about how these conceptual schemas that we create work, and then you learn them and you realize, whoa, these are evolutionary competitive systems. That seems to mean that none of them are true. And if you grew up believing that a particular moral narrative is true, and all of a sudden you realize, well, it's true only in the context of a set of believers, fluent speakers of that language, who all agree that that's true. You visit Rome and they don't believe it. That can like pull the foundation out from under you. And that literally creates a void in your soul that can destroy you. It does destroy people. By the way, when you think about a lot of the suicides in our local villages, why do you think that happened? For healthy people. I know a lot of people commit suicide because of all sorts of issues, but if they were healthy, that doesn't just happen in villages. I'm just picking on that because it's such a big problem. You have competition between two oral narratives, the local beliefs and the so-called beliefs of the modern Western bias, which elders will tell you in the village that's destroying the village. They're absolutely right. The contrast between those two beliefs are like two operating systems that are both fighting over your mind. And you can't hold them both in your head together unless you have some kind of split drive mechanism, which you can do. You can run Apple as well as PC, right? It used to be that you couldn't. If you loaded an Apple program into a PC, you saw what happened on Independence Day, right? Blew up the alien mothership, right? And by the way, that was the only time I ever saw an Apple successfully linked to another computer system, and it destroyed it. But that's what happens, I think, to a lot of people. I mean, you could see it in Europe, too. I mean, Kierkegaard's an example of this. Nietzsche is essentially an example of that. And some of the existentialist philosophies, literally, what are they dealing with? They're dealing with that void that hits them once they grow up to the point in their contemporary educational system and learn that the previous meta-narratives that were taught to the people were false, or neither true nor false, which is what we call it today, right? They're neither true nor false. Then what do you do to fill that void? Because you cannot get up in the morning unless you have a reason for getting up. Is that right? You ever try getting up in the morning with absolutely no reason to get up?
Just stay in bed.
It's much more comfortable right there. I have a Chihuahua that does that. Come on, let's get up. No. There's no reason to get up. She says, if I get up, I'll just be tortured by that 40-pound St. Bernard pup, which is 10 times her size. Today. Probably 11 times her size tomorrow. Is this fun? It's dangerous stuff. It kills people. Because they grow up and they go to school, they go to college, and they get this kind of postmodern education. Tells you that this is all interpretation. There's no right answer. And yet, of course, there are better answers. How do we figure that out? Isn't that cool? How do you figure out? How can I say that Mozart is better than Salieri? This is an opinion. Charles Murray can't be wrong. That's an opinion. That was a joke. How many of you hate Charles Murray? How many of you know who Charles Murray is? Nobody. Okay. I can show you Charles Murray.
Yeah. Well, you can't hate something you don't know.
Or you don't know you can't.
Or like.
Oh.
Oh, is this gonna make this
I'll just, you won't actually be able to see him, you'll just hear him.
Highly likely that both genes and the environment have something to do with racial differences. And we went no farther than that. There is an asymmetry between saying probably genes have some involvement, and the assertion that it's entirely environmental. And that's the assertion that is being made. If you're going to be upset at the bell curve, you are obligated to defend the proposition that the black-white difference in IQ scores is 100% environmental, and that's a very tough measure. Here's the way that we went about it. So we're now, how did you put it a while ago, the radioactive rods were getting closer to
Yes, yeah.
Here's the thinking that...
So, at least you know his voice. No, he wrote The Bell Curve. It's actually the title of the book, along with Herrnstein. And the reason, well, I mean, he's been in the news a lot, actually. But March, a year ago, he was scheduled to speak at Middlebury College, which was one of the places I went for a 9-week course. So I'm familiar with Middlebury. And they rioted, basically, to keep him from speaking. In fact, one of their own professors was injured in the riot. So that's part of the whole issue about not letting people speak because you disagree with them. Actually, the people that disagree with him and what they say about why they disagree with him only convinces me they did not read the book that they're complaining about. I even have friends that are mad at me for bringing up his name and arguing that they're misunderstanding the book, etc. So that's fine. Why did I bring... I'm getting old, so I don't remember why I brought up Charles Murray now. Oh, because I mentioned Charles Murray and say Charles Murray's right, and that's an opinion, so that's... Okay, should we take a break? Sure. I still haven't explained how you get an A in the first test. Actually, I did. All you have to do is send me 900 words, right? Please don't send me the same words.
The words? But repeat it?
I mean, they're interesting questions. Answer the question.
Repetitive words.
Okay, we'll take a break. About 10 minutes or so.